Alright, logic fans, what's up? Welcome to our second video on section 4.5. This is video 4.5b. We left off looking at this problem and we figured out how to show that it is in fact a quantificational sentence. Now, I want to make an important point here, which is pretty simple, which is that you can mix, obviously you're not restricted to just using QS8 or QS7. That is, you don't have to only introduce existential quantifiers or only introduce universal quantifiers. You can introduce both. So, for example, you could obtain an expression like this, all right? Now, looking at the previous problem we still have up here, can you show me how we would obtain an expression like this? What change needs to be made in our demonstration here? And that'll convince you that you can actually mix and match these things. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to go through and make any changes that are necessary, but here you're going to use the universal quantifier, so this is going to have to change to QS7. Then of course everything else is the same, it's just that you've got the universal quantifier involved. So that's a really nice way of doing it, and you could have had the universal quantifier out here and the existential quantifier in here, and that's all perfectly fine. Okay, this definition does not say anything about you can't use a universal quantifier if you've already used an existential or anything like that. Okay, the one thing you do have to be mindful of is that this part of the definition or the rule QS8 really does hold. So even if you're using existential and universal quantifiers, the individual variable x cannot occur in the previous line. It doesn't matter if it occurred on an existential or if it occurred on a universal and you're trying to introduce an existential, you're trying to introduce a universal, it cannot occur in the previous line, and it doesn't matter which quantifier it appeared on. Okay, so I wanted to make that point for you. Give this one a try, all right? See if you can build this, and notice it's of the form P or not P, okay? Okay, so you're going to build this one just like this, right? So you're going to introduce F, that's what you have. Then you're going to have the existential quantifier introduced on that, just like this, okay? You can negate that, and then you can, use the disjunction rule QS4 to put them together like this. And so you can have the existential quantifier in terms of x here and in terms of x here. The issue, okay, is that never actually violated this rule that the individual variable x does not occur in the previous line. So notice we used QS8 only here, and the line that we used it on was this one, and there's no appearance of x there. It's just that after that, what we ended up doing was we ended up playing with this thing, and then we strung them together this way. So that's perfectly permissible, okay, and that's absolutely allowed. So I wanted to make sure that you didn't feel like this was actually sneakily violating one of our rules or something. It's not. It's perfectly okay. To be absolutely clear, what would be a problem is if you had something like, let's just build it up so you can actually see one together. If you had like GB, that was QS1, and then you had something like FA and GB, just to make a really simple example. So that would be what, QS3 on lines 1 and 2. And then if you built up an existential quantifier, basically like this, if you went like this and like this, this would actually be okay so far. The problem is going to come in somewhere else. So let's take a look here. That would be QS8 on line 3. And then we've got this one. So let's suppose that from there, what we did was we ended up doing another one of these. This would be a problem. Okay, so this is what would violate the rule in question, right? If you did this, this is a violation of this part because the individual variable x already occurs in the previous line that you're using. So we're adding an existential quantifier to this line, and the one we add has the x in it already. Therefore, we have to go to y or z, or if you want, you can introduce a subscript if you want. But yeah, so this would be okay, but going to the x again, that is what's absolutely ruled out. So I hope that that's clear for you. So to drive that point home and other points to make sure you're absolutely clear on it, I'm going to present a series of permissible or impermissible so that you can really see if you've internalized the lesson. So here's a tree that demonstrates allegedly that this is a quantificational sentence, and is there a mistake in the implementation of QS8? So is this implementation of QS8 permissible or impermissible? Pause now. Okay, this is absolutely permissible. This one's absolutely okay. No trouble there. Let's try another. What if I switch this to a B instead of an A? Is this now permissible or impermissible use of QS8? Pause now. Okay, this is absolutely impermissible, forbidden. Do not do it, all right? Because you can only replace an individual constant type, right? You can replace tokens of the same type, but these are different types. So you could do multiple if they were both A, like we did a second ago, but you cannot do this, okay, where you have different ones there. All right, let's keep looking at some of these cases. In fact, let's jump right to it and look at this case. So you've got two applications of QS8 here. Is this application permissible? Is this application permissible? Pause now. Okay, so this application is absolutely permissible. That is absolutely okay. All right, no trouble there. All right, and in fact, this application is also permissible, no trouble, right? We took this whole unit and put the existential quantifier in front of it, and we replaced one individual constant type D with the Y that did not occur in there, and so that is absolutely okay. Now, if you had tried to make this an X also, that would not work. Okay, that would not work at all. So just be aware of those kinds of things, and that's what I'm talking about with all of this jargon here. It's easier, I think, just to look at the cases and see what's allowed and what's not. All right, let's try a bigger case where you have to do three of them and you have to think about the order in which you do them a little bit. So pause now and demonstrate that this expression is in fact a quantificational sentence that can be built up from our rules QS1 through QS8 and nothing else. Pause now. Okay, let's go through this one together, all right? And we did one like it with the universal case, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get all of these on board. The X is going to be A, the Y is going to be B, and the Z is going to be C. So that's just all going to be a QS, what is that, QS1. This is going to be GB, and that likewise is going to be QS1. Then we're going to do HC, QS1, and now we've got all our individual constants that we need on the board. All right, so these are all sentences. Now we have to build them up in different ways. So the first thing I'm going to try to do, right, is build this expression right here. So I'm going to do the AND first. So that's going to get me FA and GB, and that's QS, what is that, QS3 on lines, what, 1 and 2, okay. Whoops. Like that, and then we've got what? We've got to build up the disjunction, right? So we're going to get this guy, which is going to look like this, all in parentheses, and then we're going to do our disjunction adder, which is QS4, and that's going to be on lines 4 and 3. All right, and now we're ready to start tacking on the existential quantifiers, but we got to be careful, right? An existential quantifier gets tacked on by appending it to an entire unit. So we have to append it to this entire unit. And then once you got an existential quantifier here, it's that entire unit. So you've got to do the Z first, the Y second, and the X last. And that has to occur, all right? Because you're prefixing an entire unit. You can't sneak them in to different places. That's actually going to be important for some of our later work. So make sure you get that down. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this entire unit right here, and we're going to prefix the entire, we're going to surround the whole thing in parentheses, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to add on a quantifier, an existential quantifier. In this case, it's going to be the Z1 that prefixes that entire unit. And then we're going to replace one of these, and since it's this one that's the Z, we're going to replace that one, and that is QS8 on lines, or rather line 5. Okay, see if you can finish it from there. Okay, so clearly here now what we end up doing is we end up finishing this by, we take this whole thing and we prefix that entire unit with the Y. And that's going to replace the B. And then we take this entire unit and we prefix that entire unit with the X. No slipping quantifiers into different places. It goes in front of this whole thing, all right? And we replace the A with the X here. And that's that. So that demonstrates that this is in fact a quantificational sentence. Okay, last concept for today is the formal definition of what an existentially quantified sentence is. So let's take a look at that. So no surprises here with the definition of this concept, all right? It follows what we did for a universally quantified sentence. So in addition to your negations, your conditionals, your brutes, which are just like FA, your biconditionals, your conditionals, and your universally quantified sentences, you also now have this fundamental type of sentence, the existentially quantified sentence. And a sentence is an existentially quantified sentence if and only if the last line of its tree uses QS8. So this is an existentially quantified sentence. Why? Because the last line of its tree right here uses QS8. Okay? So let's look at a few examples to close out this section. So for these sentences, these are all sentences. We've proven in these videos that a lot of them are sentences. Identify their fundamental type. Is this an existentially quantified sentence? Is it a universally quantified sentence? Is it a conditional? Is it a negation? What is it? And so on for all of them. Pause now. All right, so let's go ahead and go through these together. But this is an existentially quantified sentence, all right? The last line of its tree uses QS8. Exact same point here. This is an existentially quantified sentence. The last line of its tree uses QS8. The last line of this sentence's tree uses QS2, the negation symbol. This is a negation. That is not an existentially quantified sentence, nor a universally quantified sentence. Likewise, this is a negation, right? The last line of its tree. What's its main connective? It's this guy, right? That would be the last line of its tree. What about this? Is this a conditional? Is it an existentially quantified sentence? What is this? This is an existentially quantified sentence. If you were to build it up using the trees we've been doing, the last line would use QS8. This is an existentially quantified sentence. This is a conditional. The last line would be QS, what is that, 5. This is a conditional, okay? Right? So the antecedent is this thing. The consequent is this thing, all right? Now, what about this one? This is a biconditional. All right, biconditional. This is not an existentially quantified sentence. It's a biconditional. This right here is an existentially quantified sentence. That's an existentially quantified sentence because the last line of its tree uses QS8. Finally, this guy, what fundamental type is this? This is a disjunction. Okay, the last line would use QS4, the disjunction symbol. So, I hope that all makes some sense. Again, it all parallels exactly what we did in 4.3, so hopefully you're able to pick it up quickly, and it's just going to reinforce all this stuff from 4.3 so that it's easier for you to really get it down and feel confident with it. All right, Logic fans, we'll catch you on the next video where we discuss the meaning of the existential quantifier. See you there.